I mean, do I even have to say who I'm rooting for? What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and today we're diving into my spoiler-free review of Godzilla vs. Kong. It is Team Godzilla over here, baby, so if you love Team Godzilla, let me know in the comments. And guys, before I get started, I have to say a huge thank you to Warner Brothers for hosting this screening and allowing me the chance to see this in theaters, guys. I saw it in IMAX, and this is the first movie I saw in theaters since Tenet last year, and trust me when I tell you, you need to see Godzilla, if you can, safely in a movie theater, because it deserves the big screen. Godzilla vs. Kong hits theaters and HBO Max this Wednesday, March 31st, and is directed by Adam Wingard, who directed The Guest, which I liked, and Netflix's Death Note, which we don't talk about. Now, this film stars Millie Bobby Brown, Alexander Skarsgård, Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, and Kaylee Hottle. Now, this is an ensemble cast, so there are many actresses and actors that I did not list, guys, that you'll recognize when you see this film, and sometimes they come together, and it's good, and sometimes, well, it's not. Now, before I get into my review, guys, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I talk about movies really like this all the time. So if you don't want to miss out on this and so much more, guys, I'm ranking the MonsterVerse this week. I can't wait to drop that video. Go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on the bell so you'll be the first one in the comments. And speaking of comments, guys, I need to know, Team Godzilla or Team Kong? Or Team another Godzilla? You know what I mean. And don't forget to smash that like button, guys. Alrighty, guys, so let's get into the film. Now, if you don't know about Godzilla vs. Kong, let me try to introduce you to the plot just a little bit. It takes place after King of the Monsters, where a tech company named Apex Cybernetics is developing something mysterious that causes Godzilla to attack unprovoked, which then triggers a group of scientists to use Kong to hopefully restore balance to the world. Now, guys, before I do get into my positives, I need to let you know two things. One, this is so much better than King of the Monsters, even though the bar was set pretty low, and the second half of this film breezes by, and the pacing overall was much better here than in the previous film. So what I'm trying to say is, guys, this is so much better than King of the Monsters. And the second thing is, if you're a member of Team Kong, well, you get a lot of him in this movie. Godzilla has his moments, but this is clearly Kong's film, and it makes sense because they can bring about a lot more emotion with Kong than they can with Godzilla, even though I'm still repping my boy. Alrighty, so let's get into what worked about Godzilla vs. Kong. And it starts with the direction by Adam Wingard, who makes the big fights feel easy to track, and honestly, I feel like I'm on a theme park ride. I'm not even kidding, guys. There's sometimes where the camera goes upside down, topsy-turvy. Early on in the film, we're on a boat with Kong, and the camera starts to just tumble, and at first I thought, okay, I'm gonna get motion sickness, but honestly it works because it immersed me into these fights. Sometimes the camera's back far enough to see Godzilla and Kong square off, and sometimes we're put in the cockpit and it looks like we're about to get eaten by Kong, but instead it just allowed me to really experience this film in such a unique way. So kudos to Adam Wingard for just taking this approach. I honestly can tell you that this film has the most well-directed battles of the entire MonsterVerse. I mean, I could see everything on screen. That's a huge plus, especially with our three big fights, which deserve all the visibility. I mean, I just love the visuals here, especially in Hong Kong, where the neon lights are reflecting off both Kong and Godzilla, and it's just eye candy, guys. It made me so happy to see that, and it looked so great on the big screen. Now, another thing this movie delivers on is an incredible score by Tom Holkenborg, otherwise known as Junkie XL. His composition here is amazing. It's among the best I've heard in a little while, and trust me when I tell you, this score made me want to run through a wall. It's epic in every sense of the word, and it added to the incredible fights between our two apex predators. There's even this techno vibe that he plays with when we get to Hollow Earth, and I thought to myself, Junkie, chill, homie. I know the movie's about Godzilla vs. Kong, but I can't stop thinking about how amazing your score is, and when that happens, man, that's what you call a good composition. And speaking of Hollow Earth, guys, I'm a big fan of how sci-fi this movie gets. Yeah, I know, you're probably thinking, what? That entire sequence was my favorite of the film too, because it had a very Jurassic Park feel to it and was one of the few scenes to make me ooh and ah out loud in my seat. And that's saying a lot when you have three huge fights between Godzilla and Kong. Now, we do have to talk about the acting, and I'm going to get positive first, alright? I'm not going to dive into the negatives yet, but there are some really good takeaways when it comes to our acting here, and there are some standout performances. There are actually only two standout performances. Let's start with Brian Tyree Henry, who plays a conspiracy theorist turned genius named Bernie Hayes. Now honestly, right off the bat, I already knew Brian Tyree Henry was going to deliver with his comedic timing. I mean, if you haven't seen him in the TV series Atlanta, you need to go check him out. He's great there, and he's also really good in this film. Even though he's sometimes a little bit too comical, and well, we'll talk about the script in a little bit, he is a breath of fresh air that we needed because there are still so many bland performances in this film. And the second standout performance in this movie is Kaylee Hottle as Gia. She's a young girl who has this very special connection with Kong. You've probably seen her in the trailers, but guys, when I tell you that it just works, it's the icing on top for not only Kong fans, but for fans of monster movies, well, I'll tell you, it really, really works in this film. It adds another layer of depth that we needed, and even though the movie isn't very layered in general, I do think that Gia brings the most emotion. Actually, I'll say it, Kaylee Hottle delivers the best performance in the movie. She has raw emotion. Every tear she shed, I felt. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. You guys need to see it on the big screen to know what I'm talking about. And while I'm raving about the writing for Gia's character, the writing overall for our humans isn't solved here, but at least there's less of a focus on them, unlike there was in King of the Monsters. I mean, that film, I know I don't have to say it, guys, but there was too much of an emphasis on our human characters, and it was poorly written. Here, it's not great, but screenwriters Eric Pearson and Max Borenstein finally understand that our main characters cannot be humans, they need to be the monsters. There aren't as many bloated conversations in this movie, and again, not everything is well executed, but at least things seem to be a little bit more streamlined. And for as cheesy as Godzilla vs. Kong gets, I honestly didn't mind some of the characters here. We've been seeing a lot of Damien Bichir lately, and rightfully so because he's awesome, but he's fun here as evil corporate mastermind Walter Simmons. And then you have Rebecca Hall as Dr. Andrews, who does her best to ground the film, and it actually works in some scenes. And if you're wondering about Kyle Chandler, guys, I love him, I really do, but let's just say it's maybe for the best that he's not in this film too much, because he does the same thing I hated that he did in King of the Monsters, which is that weird whisper shouting under his breath. It doesn't work, and there is barely any of him in this movie, and the movie's better for it. And when it comes to Millie Bobby Brown, she's actually much better here than she was in the previous film, but again, they don't give her much of the spotlight, and it actually helps that her and Brian Tyree Henry have some pretty good on-screen chemistry. And it's also really cool to see Julian Dennison play Josh Madison's classmate. He's funny, he does deliver some cool jokes, even though they use him in a weird way in that third act. I still think that the synergy among our cast here is just much better than what we've gotten in some of the previous films. Okay, it sounds like I love this movie, but guys, I have to tell you that I don't, and it really does come down to the writing. Again, it's very generic here and very familiar, and honestly, incredibly unappealing. I feel like they just can't nail these human interactions. And some of our characters just feel like they're on screen to deliver very forced dialogue and nothing else, which felt like a waste of time. Isa Gonzalez, who I pretty much like in everything I've seen her in, she is not the bright spot in this movie because they give her, as a character, the worst lines. They give her terrible one-liners. She plays the daughter of Walter Simmons, so she's trying to be very evil and menacing and cunning, and from the moment she stepped on screen and uttered her first words, I have to say, guys, it wasn't believable. And she's not the only one, guys. Alexander Skarsgård also plays a very generic scientist named Nathan Lind. If they didn't team him up with Gia and Dr. Andrews, I genuinely think I would have forgotten that he exists. His character is very two-dimensional, and overall, there's really not a lot of depth to this movie. Not that I'm looking for them to really focus on the humans again, but this movie dedicates at least 80% of its time to the humans, so they at least should have nailed it, and I don't think they did. And for as much as I love the visuals and direction in this film, there are certain choices that made me pause. When it comes to our antagonist, let's just say a certain monster has a less than appealing design. It took me a little while to grow to even enjoy how this monster looked, but overall, I don't necessarily think it grabbed me in any which way. I just felt like, oh, it's on screen. Okay. And throughout the film, there are several epic moments and funny character traits, but they're just overused. There are about 4 or 5 shots where we see Gia's back and she's facing Kong, and Kong is facing her. The first time was cool. The second time, okay, I understand. But 3 or 4 times after that, guys, we get it, Gia's small and Kong is big. Like, how many more times do we need to see the same shot, the same tracking and everything? It looks so similar to one another that eventually I just feel like the effect wears off. And when it comes to Bernie, I love how geeky he is, but he acts almost unnatural towards the second half of the film. He says things like, I'm about to go viral, and honestly, Sometimes films being self-aware is a plus, but when it's not executed properly like this, it's just a distraction, and the humor overall in this movie, guys, really is a toss-up. While jokes are better utilized here than in King of the Monsters, the appeal wears off fast, and instead, I realize they've tried to make a joke, but it doesn't land. Instead, it's just background noise, and that's something you don't want in a movie because I can hear them trying to deliver that punchline, but it just never resonates with me. And then there are story decisions in the final act that I couldn't get on board with. Without spoiling anything, I'll just say, guys, we don't need so much emphasis on humans. That's it. You'll know what I'm talking about. If not, come back to the comments and we'll talk about it when you see it. But man, I just think that the story tries so hard to focus on the monsters here to try and wash away that bad taste in our mouth in the previous film, which it succeeds in some regards. But then there are some moments where you see the screenwriters trying to almost resurrect the sins of King of the Monsters, and I thought, no, please don't do this. And there are too many of those moments for that final act to feel very cohesive. So overall, you guys, Godzilla vs. Kong really does serve as a decent, fun, popcorn type of film. You're gonna go to the theaters for this, and you're gonna see it, and you'll probably walk out feeling satisfied if you came in just wanting to see Godzilla and Kong square off against one another. If you don't care too much about the writing past that, you might not mind this film, but if you're looking for a little bit more depth and something to really hold your attention outside of those mega fights, you'll be disappointed. For me, the film really was just a mixed bag. There were so many things it did right, so many things it did wrong, and there was never that moment where I felt like they got the balance and tone correct. Sometimes it's very comical, sometimes it's super serious, but overall this is very much a lighter film compared to King of the Monsters and 2014's Godzilla, and this is more in the same vein as Jordan Vogt-Roberts' Kong Skull Island. Some scenes are absolutely gorgeous here, and it helps that I saw it on IMAX, and boy, the score, sound design, it just works. Every single roar by Godzilla or growl by Kong was just felt on another level, due in large part to the theatrical experience. I think a lot of people will enjoy this film more than they would if they would have seen it at home. I know that if I saw this film on my 32-inch 720p TV, I probably wouldn't be as impressed. Director Adam Wingard definitely deserves some credit for delivering the best directed fights of the Monsterverse. However, the screenplay is to blame for so much of what went wrong in this movie. It's a film that I walked out of and I said, okay, hey, that was fun, but did I really love it? No. Is it great? No. Is it even really good? I don't think so. It's a film that falls in the middle for me, so if I had to rate it, guys, on a 5-star scale, I probably would give it that 3.5 star out of 5 range, because the movie doesn't do anything exceedingly well, but it's not terrible enough for me to tell you don't watch it. If you're a fan of either of these monsters, you need to see this film. But if you're not in love with the Monsterverse, you might want to pass this one. So there you have it, you guys. That's my real review of Godzilla vs. Kong, a movie that I didn't hate, but I can't tell you that I loved either. However, I need to know what you guys think, so get loud in the comments down below and let me know, when you see this movie on Wednesday, did you love it? Did you hate it? Or are you in the middle, just like I am? And go ahead and smash that big red button below so you can find out where I rank this film in the Monsterverse, because I already know where I'm putting this movie. And smash that bell and like button so you can get more early reviews just like this. Alrighty, y'all. Well, you know what? I'm gonna go back and rep my boy, because you know what, this Wednesday, I better not see any slander on the timeline. It's Team Godzilla, baby. Alrighty, y'all. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.